Leora floated in the dark. Around her, the wreckage of the Althari fleet drifted like bones in a silent sea. Metal twisted into strange shapes. Glass shattered into glittering dust, and the cold of space pressed in from all sides. She sat curled in the pilot's chair of a broken scout ship, her silver hair tangled and dull, her eyes hollow. Once she had guided starships through the celestial weave, a network of light and song only elves could hear. Now the song was gone. Only silence remained. Her fingers trembled as she clutched a small, warm shape against her chest. Kyle. Her dragon. He was no bigger than a house cat. His scales, once bright as molten gold, now faded to a dull bronze. He breathed slowly, each breath a soft puff of warmth in the freezing cabin. His wings, thin as parchment, were tucked tight against his body. He had not flown in weeks. Not since the devouring maw came. The maw was not a ship. Not a beast in the usual sense. It was a living void, a thing that ate light, memory, and hope. It had swallowed whole worlds, not with fire or force, but with quiet hunger. It left nothing behind but empty shells and ghosts. Leora had watched it take her people. One by one, their voices faded from the weave until only her own remained. Then even that had grown faint. She had tried to run. She had pushed the scout ship to its limits, weaving through asteroid belts and dead stars, but the maw always followed. It did not chase. It simply waited. And when she grew tired, when her mind frayed at the edges, it whispered, not in words, but in feelings. Doubt, despair, the crushing weight of being the last. Kale stirred. He lifted his head, his eyes glowing faintly like embers under ash. He nudged her hand with his snout. She stroked his head, her touch gentle despite the grime on her skin. I know, she whispered. I'm still here. But she wasn't sure she wanted to be. Outside the cracked viewport, the stars seemed farther away than ever. The ship's power was almost gone. Life support flickered. Oxygen levels dropped by the hour. She had rationed the last of her water, but even that was gone now. Her throat burned. Her limbs felt heavy as if filled with lead. She had considered opening the airlock, letting the cold take her. It would be quick. Cleaner than starving or suffocating. Kale would not survive, but maybe that was mercy. Better than letting the maw find him. Better than watching him fade like the others. She closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw her sister's face, laughing under twin suns, braiding starlight into her hair. She saw her captain standing tall on the bridge of the dawn chorus, shouting orders as the sky turned black. She saw them all swallowed by silence. A soft chime broke through her thoughts. Her eyes snapped open. The ship's proximity alarm, faint but real. Something was near. She forced herself upright, wincing at the pain in her muscles. She tapped the cracked console. Static hissed, then cleared. A blip appeared on the screen. Small, slow-moving, human-made, a salvage vessel. Her heart sank. Humans. Short-lived, loud, reckless. They scavenged the dead zones for scrap for profit. They would board, take what little was left and leave her to die. Or worse, they might try to help, dragging her into their chaotic world where nothing lasted, where bonds broke as easily as glass. She powered down the console. Let them think the ship was empty. Let them move on, but the blip did not move on. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The salvage ship matched her drift, holding position just a few hundred meters away. No hails, no scans, at least none she could detect. Just waiting. Kale growled low in his throat, a sound like distant thunder. His scales flickered, a weak pulse of gold. Don't, Leora murmured. Don't give us away. Then a new sound. A docking clamp engaged. Metal groaned as it latched onto her hull. Air hissed as a seal formed. Someone was coming aboard. She reached for her sidearm, a slender blade forged from moon steel, but her hand shook too much to hold it steady. She tucked it back into her belt. If they wanted to kill her, they already could have blown the ship apart. This was something else. The inner airlock cycled. Footsteps echoed in the corridor, light, quick. Human. A figure appeared in the doorway. She was young, maybe in her 20s, with dark hair pulled into a messy knot, and eyes that held too much worry for someone so small. She wore a patched flight suit, boots scuffed from years of use, and a tool belt slung low on her hips. No weapons, just a med kit and a handheld scanner. She stopped when she saw Leora, her breath caught. Not in fear, but in something softer, recognition maybe. Or pity. You're alive, the woman said, her voice rough but kind. Leora said nothing. She kept her gaze fixed on the floor, her body coiled tight. The woman stepped closer, slow, like approaching a wounded animal. "My name's Mara Lynn. I fly the Wayfarer's Hope. Picked up a faint life sign out here. Didn't think anyone could survive this deep in the dead zone." Still, Leora stayed silent. Mara knelt a few feet away, careful not to crowd her. She set the medkit down. "Your dragon's running hot. Low on energy, but stable. You both are." "Barely." She glanced at the empty water canister, the dead console. "How long have you been out here?" Leora finally looked up. Her voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. "Go away." Mara didn't flinch. "I can't." "Why not?" "There's nothing here for you. No credits. No tech worth salvaging. Just ghosts." Mara's eyes flicked to the viewport, to the endless dark beyond. "I don't salvage ghosts," she said quietly. "I look for people." Leora let out a bitter laugh. "I'm not people. Not anymore. You're breathing. That counts." Kale lifted his head again, watching Mara with sharp, intelligent eyes. He let out a soft chirp. Mara smiled faintly. "Hey there, little spark. You held on good." Leora's chest tightened. No one had spoken to Kale like that in years. Not since the elven fleets fell. "Why are you here?" Leora asked, her voice cracking. "Really?" Mara hesitated. Then she sat back on her heels, her expression turning distant. "Lost my sister 2 years back. Colony got hit by a corporate purge. I wasn't there when it happened. Couldn't save her." She looked at Leora, her gaze steady. "I won't make that mistake again." Leora stared at her. The words hit like a stone in still water, ripples spreading through her numbness. This human carried her own ghosts, and yet she still reached out. Mara opened the med kit. "Let me help. Just water. A nutrient patch. You don't have to trust me, but you don't have to die alone either." Leora wanted to refuse, to push her away like she'd pushed away everything else. But Kale leaned toward Mara, his tail curling slightly. And something in Leora, the part that still remembered warmth, that still remembered song, ached. She nodded, just once. Mara moved slowly, handing her a sealed water pouch. Leora drank greedily, the cool liquid burning her dry throat. Mara placed a patch on her arm, vitamins, electrolytes, a mild stimulant. Then she checked Kale, running the scanner over his small body. "He's got a low-grade fever, probably from stress and exhaustion, but his core's strong. He'll bounce back." "He's all I have left," Leora admitted, the words raw. Mara looked at her, really looked at her. "Then you've still got something worth fighting for." Outside, the stars watched in silence. The devouring maw still lurked in the edges of space, patient, hungry. But for the first time in weeks, Leora did not feel its pull. Not while this human sat beside her, offering water and quiet strength. She glanced at Mara. "You shouldn't stay. It's not safe." Mara shrugged. "Nowhere's safe out here, but I've got shields, a working engine, and enough rations for 3. You and your dragon are coming with me. I can't ask that." "You didn't," Mara said, standing. "I'm offering." Leora looked down at Kale, who had already drifted back to sleep, his breathing easier. She thought of the airlock, of silence, of giving up. Then she thought of a human woman who flew into the dead zone just because a scanner blinked. She took a deep breath. "Okay." Mara nodded as if she'd expected nothing less. "Good, let's get you both aboard." "My ship's not much, but it's warm. And it's got coffee." Leora almost smiled. Almost. As Mara helped her to her feet, gentle, firm, never rushing, Leora felt something shift inside her. Not hope, not yet, but maybe the space where hope could grow. The nightmares still waited. The war was far from over. But for now, in the cold dark, she was not alone, and that was enough. The Wayfarer's Hope was nothing like the elven ships Leora had known, where her old vessels had flowed like living things, curved walls humming with starlight, floors that shifted to match the crew's steps. This human ship was all sharp edges and exposed wires. Pipes hissed in the walls. Lights flickered. The air smelled of oil, burnt coffee, and something sweet Mara called protein bars. It was messy, loud, alive. Leora sat on a narrow bunk in the small guest cabin, wrapped in a thick blanket Mara had given her. Kale lay curled at her feet, his scales slowly regaining their golden sheen. He had eaten a little, some soft paste Mara heated on a tiny stove, and now slept deeply, his breathing steady. Leora watched him, her fingers tracing the edge of the blanket. She still did not trust this place. but she could not deny it felt safer than the void. Mara moved through the ship like she knew every bolt and panel by heart. She patched a leak in the oxygen recycler, reset a tripped circuit, and brewed another pot of coffee, all while humming a tuneless song under her breath. She did not ask Leora questions, did not press her to talk. She simply worked, steady and calm, as if having a half-starved elf and her dragon aboard was the most normal thing in the galaxy. Hours passed. The ship drifted along a quiet route far from major trade lanes. Mara had said they were heading toward a neutral outpost, a place where they could rest and resupply. But Leora knew the devouring maw would not stay away forever. It sensed weakness. It sensed life. And now it would sense 2 lives instead of 1. She stood, her legs still unsteady, and walked to the small viewport in the cabin wall. Outside, stars glittered like scattered salt. No sign of the maw, not yet, but she could feel it, the same way she used to feel storms coming in the old forests of Elthar. A pressure in the air, a silence too deep to be natural. Mara appeared in the doorway holding 2 mugs. She offered one to Leora. Coffee, black. I figured you wouldn't want sugar. Leora took it, surprised by the warmth in her hands. She sipped. It was bitter, strong, and strangely comforting. Thank you. Mara leaned against the doorframe, sipping her own. You don't have to thank me for coffee. I'm thanking you for more than that. Mara looked at her dark eyes soft. You don't owe me anything, Leora. How do you know my name? You said it in your sleep. Last night. You were calling for someone, your sister, I think. Leora's throat tightened. She looked away. Her name was Illyra. Mara nodded slowly. I'm sorry. Silence settled between them. But it was not the heavy silence of the scout ship. This silence felt like breathing room, like space to heal. After a while, Mara said, Tell me about her. If you want to. Leora hesitated. Elves did not share grief lightly. Their memories were sacred, woven into the weave for all to remember. But the weave was broken now, and Illyra was gone. Maybe speaking her name would keep her real a little longer. She could sing to the stars, Leora said softly, not with her voice, with her hands. She was a shipwright. She built vessels that moved like dancers. She said every bolt she placed held a piece of her heart. She paused, her eyes distant. The maw took her first. I saw it happen. One moment she was on the bridge of her new ship, laughing. The next, she just stopped. Like a candle blown out. Mara didn't offer empty words. No, she's in a better place, or time heals. She just listened. Then she said, My sister, Lena, used to fix broken toys for the kids in our colony. Even when parts were missing, she'd make them work again. Said everything deserved a second chance. She looked down at her mug. I wasn't there when the corporate fleet came. I was on a run to the outer rim. By the time I got back, there was nothing left but ash. Leora looked at her. You blame yourself. Every day, Mara admitted. But I can't bring her back. All I can do is make sure I don't leave anyone else behind. Leora understood that feeling. It was the same weight that had almost crushed her in the scout ship. The guilt of surviving when others did not. Kale stirred, lifting his head. He looked at Mara, then let out a soft, rumbling purr. Mara smiled. He likes me. He doesn't like many, Leora said. He's old. Older than I am. He was bonded to my grandmother before she passed him to me. Old soul, Mara said, crouching to scratch behind Kale's horns. He leaned into her touch, his eyes half closed in pleasure. Leora watched them, something warm unfurling in her chest. This human, with her rough hands and quiet heart, had done in 2 days what Leora had not felt in months. Safety. But safety was an illusion. A low alarm beeped from the cockpit. Mara stood quickly. Stay here. Leora followed anyway. In the cockpit, Mara studied the scanner. Her face was tight. We've got company. Leora peered over her shoulder. 3 blips, small, fast-armed pirates, scavengers, or worse. Can we outrun them? Leora asked. Maybe, Mara said, already flipping switches. But they've got us boxed in. If we run, they'll chase. If we fight, we lose. Leora looked at the screen. Then she looked at Kale, who had followed them and now sat alert on the console, his scales glowing faintly. There's another way, she said. Mara turned. What? Leora closed her eyes. She reached deep, past the numbness, past the fear, to the last thread of the celestial weave still clinging to her soul. It was weak, frayed, but it was there. She whispered an old elven word, a word of bending, of shadow. The ship's lights dimmed. The engines hummed lower. Outside, the Wayfarer's hope seemed to blur, its outline softening, fading. Mara stared. "What did you do?" "Cloak," Leora said, her voice strained. "Not perfect, but enough to hide us for a few minutes." Mara's eyes widened. "You can do that?" "Used to," Leora said, swaying slightly. Kyle jumped onto her shoulder, pressing close, sharing his warmth. "It takes energy. I haven't done it since the fleet fell." Mara grabbed her arm gently to steady her. "Then don't, not for pirates," but it was too late. The pirates' ships swept past, scanning, searching. One slowed, hovering near where they had been. Leora held her breath. Kale's glow dimmed to almost nothing. Then the pirate ship moved on. Silence returned. Leora sagged against the console. Mara helped her into the pilot's seat. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Leora said. "You saved me. I won't let them take you." Mara looked at her for a long moment. Then she said, "You're not alone in this, you know." Leora wanted to believe her. But the maw was still out there, and it was getting closer. Over the next few days, Mara taught Leora how to work the ship's systems, basic repairs, how to read human scanners, how to brew coffee without burning it. In return, Leora showed Mara how to listen for disturbances in space, not with machines but with stillness. She taught her to feel the shift in gravity, the whisper of ion trails, the cold breath of the void. They fell into a rhythm. Mara cooked. Leora navigated. Kale slept in sunbeams when they passed near a star, or curled on Mara's lap while she flew. One evening, as they drifted near a nebula painted in soft purples and blues, Mara asked, "Why did you give up?" Leora didn't answer right away. She watched the colors swirl outside. "Because I thought I was the last. Because every time I closed my eyes, I saw them fall. Because the maw doesn't just kill you. It makes you forget why you wanted to live." Mara nodded. "I felt that too. After Lena. For months I just flew. No destination, no plan, just moving so I wouldn't have to stop and feel it." "What changed?" Mara looked at her. "I realized that running from grief doesn't honor the dead. Living does." Leora swallowed hard. "I don't know how to live anymore." "You're doing it," Mara said simply. "You're here. You're fighting." "That's enough," Kale chirped in agreement. Leora almost laughed. Almost. Then the ship shuddered. Not from engines. Not from impact, from something deeper. Leora's blood ran cold. She knew that feeling. "The maw," she whispered. Mara's hands flew over the controls. "Where?" "Not where, when, it's folding space." Getting closer. On the scanner, the stars began to warp. Light bent inward, like water circling a drain. The purple nebula darkened at the edges, turning black. Mara's voice was steady. "What do we do?" Leora looked at Kale. He was standing now, his entire body glowing with soft blue light. Strange symbols shimmered across his scales. Glyphs Leora had never seen before. "What is that?" Mara asked. "I don't know," Leora admitted. "But it's new, since we left the scout ship." Kale leapt onto the console and pressed his snout against the screen, right where the distortion was strongest. The glyphs pulsed brighter. Leora's mind raced. Old stories, forgotten prophecies. A pact between elves and humans sealed in dragonfire, lost when the first colonies fell. "Mara," she said, turning to her, "do you trust me?" Mara didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Then follow the dragon." Mara raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. She adjusted course, steering toward the heart of the distortion. The ship groaned as reality twisted around them. Lights flickered. Gravity shifted. But Kale's light held steady, a small sun in the growing dark. And for the first time, Leora did not feel fear. She felt purpose. The maw loomed ahead, a hole in the universe, silent and endless. But Kale's light pushed back, carving a path. Mara gripped the controls, her jaw set. "Where are we going?" Leora watched the glyphs shift on Kale's scales. Somewhere old, somewhere hidden, somewhere the maw can't reach. Yet, she didn't know what waited for them. But she knew one thing, she would not face it alone, and that changed everything. The ship shuddered as it passed through the edge of the distortion. Outside, the stars bent like glass under pressure, stretching into long streaks of light before snapping back into place. The blackness of the devouring maw loomed behind them, its hunger a silent pull at the edges of Leora's mind. But Kale's glow held strong, a soft blue shield around the Wayfarer's hope. Mara kept her hands steady on the controls, her eyes locked on the path the dragon's light carved through the warped space. "Where are we going?" she asked again, her voice tight but calm. Leora watched the glyphs shift across Kale's scales. They were not random. They formed patterns, maps maybe, or warnings. One symbol repeated more than the others. A circle with a single point at its center, like a moon with a heart of fire. "The dead moon," Leora said. "Elthar's last stronghold. We thought it was lost." Mara glanced at her. "What's there?" "The star heart," Leora whispered. "An old weapon or a key. My people never agreed on what it truly was, but the story said it could reignite the weave, or end it forever." Kale chirped, his tail flicking toward the forward screen. The path ahead narrowed, twisting through a field of shattered asteroids. Mara guided the ship with careful hands, weaving between the rocks with skill born of years in the void. Leora felt the weight of what they were doing. If the star heart was real, it might be their only chance to stop the Maw. But the old text warned that it required a price. Not just power, but unity. A joining of two souls from different worlds. Elves had tried to use it alone before. They had failed. The star heart had gone dark and the moon with it. Now, with a human at her side and a dragon showing the way, maybe the old rules no longer applied. They flew for hours. The distortion faded behind them, but the silence remained. No comms, no signals. Just the hum of the engines and Kale's quiet breaths. Then the moon appeared. It hung in the black like a ghost. Gray, cratered, lifeless. No lights, no movement, but as they drew closer, Leora saw it. A faint pulse deep beneath the surface, like a heartbeat. "That's it," she said. Mara brought the ship into a slow orbit. "How do we get in?" Kyle leapt from the console and landed on Leora's shoulder. He pointed his snout toward a wide crater near the moon's equator. The glyphs on his scales flared brighter. "There," Leora said. Mara nodded and guided the ship down. The landing was rough, the moon's gravity was uneven, tugging at them in strange ways. But the Wayfarer's hope held. They stepped onto the surface in silence. The ground was cold and dusty, the sky empty of stars. Even the Maw seemed distant here, held back by something ancient. Kyle led the way, his light cutting through the gloom. He moved with purpose, his small form casting long shadows. Leora followed, her boots crunching on the gray soil. Mara came behind, her hand resting on the grip of her sidearm, not out of fear, but habit. The entrance was hidden beneath a slab of black stone, carved with elven script so old even Leora struggled to read it. But Kale pressed his forehead to the stone and it groaned open, revealing a stairway that spiraled down into darkness. "Stay close," Leora said. They descended. The air grew warmer the deeper they went. Faint lights flickered to life along the walls, bioluminescent moss fed by some forgotten power source. The walls were smooth, carved with scenes of elves and humans standing side by side, hands joined, facing a storm of shadows. Mara touched one of the carvings. "We really did this once," Leora nodded. "Long ago. Before the rift. Before we forgot each other." At the bottom of the stairs they found a vast chamber. In its center floated the star heart, a sphere of swirling light no bigger than a human head. It pulsed slowly like a sleeping star. Around it the air shimmered with energy, but between them and the star heart stood something else. Figures. Tall, shadowy, shifting. Nightmare constructs, echoes of the Maw drawn to the power here. They had no faces, no voices, but Leora felt their hunger. They fed on fear. On doubt, Mara stepped in front of Leora. "Stay behind me." "No," Leora said. "They're not real. They're reflections of us." One of the figures stepped forward. It wore Leora's face, but its eyes were hollow. "You failed them," it whispered, its voice her own. "You let them die. You don't deserve to live." Another took Mara's shape. "You couldn't save your sister. You won't save her either." Kyle growled, his light flaring. The shadows flinched but did not retreat. Mara's hands shook, but she stood tall. "They're lying, are they?" the shadow Mara asked. "You left Lena alone. You'll leave Leora too when it gets hard." Leora's breath caught. She looked at Mara. "You won't." Mara met her gaze. "I won't." Then she turned to the shadows. "You don't get to use our pain against us." She walked forward. The shadow Leora reached for her, but Mara didn't stop. She walked right through it. The figure dissolved like smoke. Leora followed, her heart pounding. The shadow Mara tried to grab her, whispering about betrayal, about being abandoned. But Leora remembered Mara's hands offering water, her voice saying, "I won't leave you." She walked through the lie. Kyle flew ahead, his light burning away the last of the shadows. The chamber fell silent. Only the star heart remained, pulsing gently. Leora approached it slowly. The text said it needs two. One to hold the light, one to speak the truth. Mara looked at her. What truth? That we're stronger together. Leora placed her hand near the star heart. It did not burn. It hummed, like a song half remembered. Mara placed her hand beside hers. The moment their skin neared the light, the glyphs on Kale's scales blazed. He let out a cry, not of pain but of release, and shot into the air. His body dissolved into golden sparks that swirled around the star heart, binding it with threads of fire and memory. Images flooded Leora's mind, elves and humans building cities among the stars. Sharing stories, raising children who spoke both tongues, fighting side by side against an older darkness. Then, the rift, fear, mistrust, walls built between worlds, the weave fraying, the star heart dimming, and now, this moment. She looked at Mara. It's asking for a choice. What kind? To use it as a weapon? Or as a beacon? Mara frowned. A weapon would destroy the maw. Maybe, Leora said. But the maw is born from emptiness, from loneliness. A weapon might kill it, but the void would remain. A beacon could fill it. Mara was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "My sister believed everything deserved a second chance. Even the broken things." Leora smiled faintly. So did mine. Together they reached into the star heart, not to take, but to give. Leora offered her grief, her guilt, her love for those she lost. Mara offered her stubborn hope, her refusal to let go, her promise to stay, and Kale gave his ancient fire, the last spark of a dragon who remembered when the stars sang together. The star heart flared, not with destruction, with light. It shot upward, through the moon's crust into the sky, a pillar of pure radiance bright enough to be seen across the galaxy. Far away, the devouring maw recoiled, not in pain but in confusion. For the first time, it met something it could not consume. Hope. Back in the chamber, Leora and Mara sank to their knees, exhausted but alive. Kale reformed beside them, smaller now, his scales dull but his eyes bright. Mara reached for Leora's hand. Did it work? Leora listened, faintly, so faintly she heard it, a thread of the weave, not whole, not yet but singing. Yes, she whispered. It worked. And for the first time in a long time she believed the war could be won, not with swords or ships, but with trust, with two hands joined in the dark. The light from the star heart did not fade. It rose through the crust of the dead moon and pierced the black sky like a new dawn. From orbit, it looked like a single bright star had been born in the heart of nothingness. But Leora knew better. This was not just light. It was a call, a memory, a promise sent across the void. Back in the chamber, she and Mara sat side by side on the cool stone floor, their breaths slow, their bodies drained. Kale lay between them, his small form rising and falling with each breath. His scales were duller than before, his fire spent, but his eyes were open, watching the star heart with quiet pride. Mara rubbed her temples. My head feels like it's full of static. It will pass, Leora said. The star heart touched your mind. It showed you truth. That always leaves a mark. Mara looked at her. I saw them. My sister, your people. All of them. Not gone. Just waiting. Leora nodded. The weave is not dead. Only sleeping. The beacon woke a part of it. Outside the chamber, the moon trembled. Not from an explosion, but from something deeper. A shift in the bones of the world. Dust rained from the ceiling. The walls hummed with energy. We should go, Mara said, pushing herself up. This place won't hold much longer. Leora stood slowly, her legs weak but steady. She looked one last time at the star heart. It still pulsed, but softer now, like a heart at rest. It's done its work. They climbed the stairs in silence. Kyle rode on Mara's shoulder, too tired to fly. When they reached the surface, the sky was different. The stars seemed brighter, closer, and far in the distance, where the devouring maw had loomed like a wound in space. There was now a strange shimmer, like oil on water, but made of light. It's changing, Leora whispered. Mara shielded her eyes. Is it dying? I don't think so. I think it's becoming something else. They walked back to the ship. The ground beneath their feet felt warmer, as if the moon itself was waking up. When they boarded the Wayfarer's Hope, Mara went straight to the cockpit. She ran a quick systems check. All green, ready to leave? She asked. Leora looked out the viewport at the glowing pillar of light rising from the crater. Yes, Mara fired the engines. The ship lifted smoothly, climbing through the thin atmosphere. As they broke orbit, the full view of space opened before them, and what they saw stole their breath. The devouring maw was still there, but it was no longer a void. Threads of silver and gold wove through its darkness like roots through soil. Where it had once swallowed light, it now reflected it. It was not gone, but it was no longer hungry, and then signals began to appear on the scanner. Faint at first, then stronger. Mara stared at the screen. Leora. Look, dozens of blips, hundreds scattered across nearby systems. Some human, some elven, some unknown, all moving. Not away, but toward the beacon. They felt it, Leora said, her voice thick with wonder. The survivors. They're answering the call. Mara's hands tightened on the controls. We're not alone anymore. But their relief was short-lived. A new alert flashed red on the console. Not from the maw, not from survivors, from a fleet, large, armed, moving fast. Mara's face went pale. Corporate warships. Black Sun Division. Leora knew the name. They were mercenaries, scavengers, killers who sold their guns to the highest bidder. They had helped destroy human colonies. They had hunted elven ships for sport, and now they were coming for the beacon. Why? Leora asked. Because they see power, Mara said grimly, and they always take what they want. The lead ship hailed them. A harsh voice crackled over the comm. Unidentified vessel. Power down and prepare for boarding. The beacon is property of Black Sun. Mara cut the comm without answering. What do we do? Leora asked. Mara looked at her, then at Kale. We protect it, but we can't fight them. We don't have to win, Mara said. We just have to buy time. For the others to reach the beacon. For the light to spread, Leora understood. This was not about battle. It was about sacrifice. She turned to Kale. Can you do it again? The light. Kale lifted his head. His eyes glowed faintly. He gave a small nod. Mara plotted a course, not away from the fleet, but toward the heart of the transforming maw. You're flying into it? Leora asked. If they want the beacon, they'll follow us, Mara said. And I'd rather face the unknown than let them turn hope into a weapon. The Wayfarer's Hope shot forward, engines roaring. Behind them, the Black Sun fleet gave chase, weapons charging. As they neared the edge of the maw, the ship groaned. Reality twisted. Time slowed. Stars stretched into lines. But Kale's light held, a small shield around them. The warships followed. Too fast, too eager. The first one crossed the threshold. It did not explode. It did not vanish. It changed. Its metal hull softened, then bloomed, like a flower made of steel. Its weapons turned to vines of light. Its crew, visible through the viewport, stood frozen, then began to weep. Not in fear. In release. The second ship met the same fate. The third turned back. Mara watched in awe. It's not destroying them. It's healing them. Leora placed a hand on the console. The maw was never evil. It was empty. And emptiness can be filled. The remaining ships broke off, fleeing into the dark. Silence returned. Mara let out a long breath. We did it. Leora looked at her. We didn't do anything. We just showed up. And stayed, Mara said softly. Kale chirped, his light returning a little stronger. They drifted near the edge of the transformed maw, watching as more ships appeared on the scanner. Refugees, scouts, old allies. All drawn to the light, then a new signal. Strong, clear, elven. Leora's heart leapt. She activated the comm. A voice came through, familiar, weary, but alive. Leora Vey, is that you? Captain Vela. Leora whispered. Yes, we heard the song. We came, tears filled Leora's eyes. She was not the last, Mara smiled. Told you. Over the next hours, they guided the newcomers to the moon, sharing coordinates, offering shelter. The Wayfarer's Hope became a bridge between worlds. Human pilots speaking with elven navigators, sharing stories, sharing grief, sharing hope. Leora stood in the cockpit, watching it all. For so long she had carried the weight of her people alone. Now others bore it with her. Mara joined her, holding 2 mugs of coffee. What now? Leora took the mug. Now we rebuild. Together? Together! Kyle leapt onto the console, his scales catching the light from the beacon. He looked at them both, then let out a soft, contented purr. Far away, the first new star sparked to life in the place where the maw had been, and in that moment, Leora knew the war was not over, but it had turned, because they had chosen not to give up, and because one human refused to leave her behind. The days that followed were quiet, but not empty. The dead moon, once cold and silent, now hummed with life. Makeshift shelters rose from salvaged ship parts. Human engineers worked beside elven weavers, repairing hulls and restoring old systems. Children, both human and elven, played in the low gravity, their laughter echoing through the stone corridors that had slept for centuries. The Starheart still glowed in its chamber, not as a weapon but as a hearth, a place where stories were shared, wounds were tended, and new bonds were forged. Leora walked among them, no longer a ghost, but a guide. She taught the young elves how to listen to the weave, even in its weakened state. She showed human pilots how to read the subtle shifts in starlight that warned of danger or safe passage. And always Kale was with her, small, golden, and watchful, his presence a quiet comfort to all who met him. Mara stayed close too. She did not lead. She did not command. She simply helped, fixing a broken water recycler, sharing rations, sitting with those who woke screaming from nightmares of the maw. She had no title, no rank, but everyone knew her name. And when she spoke, people listened. One evening, as the twin suns of a nearby system cast long shadows across the moon's surface, Leora found Mara on the outer ridge, staring at the stars. Kale lay curled in her lap, dozing in the warmth. You should rest, Leora said, sitting beside her. Mara smiled faintly. I will, just watching. Watching what? The light, Mara said, nodding toward the sky. Where the devouring maw had once been, a new nebula bloomed, soft swirls of blue and gold dotted with newborn stars. It's growing. Leora followed her gaze. The emptiness is filling, not with force, with life. Mara was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I used to think strength was about surviving, about being the last one standing. But you showed me it's about staying with someone else when they can't stand alone. Leora looked at her. You showed me that. Mara shook her head. I just refused to leave. That's not heroism. That's just being human. And that, Leora said softly, is why your kind frightens the dark. Kyle stirred, lifting his head. He looked up at the sky, then let out a soft chirp. His scales shimmered, reflecting the new stars. The next morning, a message came through the commnet. A human colony on the edge of known space had seen the beacon. They were sending a ship not to take but to join. Others followed. A mining outpost, a research station thought lost. Even a few old warships, their crews weary of fighting, seeking peace instead. The gathering grew. Leora and Mara stood on the landing pad as the latest ship touched down, a battered freighter with faded paint and patched wings. Its ramp lowered and a group of humans stepped out, eyes wide with awe. One of them, a young woman with bright eyes and grease-stained hands, walked straight to Mara. You're the one who flew into the dead zone, she said. They told stories about you, about how you brought back hope. Mara shook her head. I just brought back a friend. The woman looked at Leora, then at Kale. You're the elf from the songs. Leora inclined her head. The songs are returning. That night a feast was held in the main chamber. Food was simple. Dried fruit, protein cakes, roasted fungi grown in hydroponic trays, but the mood was rich. Music played, a mix of human strings and elven flutes weaving together in harmony no one had heard in generations. People danced. Others shared memories of those they had lost, not with tears but with smiles. Leora watched it all, her heart full in a way she had forgotten was possible. Later, she found Mara on the ship checking the engine logs. You're leaving, Leora said. It was not a question. Mara paused. The Wayfarer's hope needs repairs. And there are more out there, people who haven't heard the beacon yet. I can't stay, Leora nodded. She had known this would come. Mara was not made to sit still. Her strength was in motion, in reaching out, in refusing to let anyone be forgotten. I'll go with you, Leora said. Mara turned. Are you sure? You taught me that hope isn't something you keep. It's something you carry. Mara's eyes softened. Then we carry it together. Kale, who had been napping on a coil of cable, leapt onto Leora's shoulder. He looked at Mara and gave a firm nod as if sealing the promise. Preparations began the next day. The refugees offered supplies, fuel, food, spare parts. The elven captain Vela gifted Leora a new navigation crystal, tuned to the reborn weave. "Go," she said. "Be the bridge." As they boarded the ship for the last time, Leora looked back at the moon. It was no longer dead. It was a cradle. A beginning. Mara powered up the engines. The ship lifted smoothly, rising above the gathering below. People waved from the surface, their faces lit by the glow of the Starheart. Once in orbit, Mara set a course for the outer rim, the darkest, quietest part of known space. The place where the beacon had not yet reached. Leora sat in the co-pilot seat, Kale curled in her lap. She watched the stars blur as they jumped to light speed. "Where to first?" Mara asked. "A colony called Haven's Reach," Leora said. "Human, cut off for years. If anyone's still there, they'll need to know they're not alone." Mara smiled. "Then that's where we go." Silence settled between them, comfortable and deep. Not the silence of despair, but the quiet of shared purpose. After a while, Mara said, "You know, I used to think the universe was cold, empty, that we were just sparks burning out in the dark." Leora looked at her. "And now?" "Now I think the dark was just waiting for someone to light a match." Kale purred, his warmth spreading through Leora's hands. Far behind them, the beacon shone brighter. Ahead, the unknown stretched wide. But they were not afraid. They had each other, and that was enough to face any nightmare.